What's up, Nuggets fans? He's Ryan Blackburn. I am not Kim Becker. I'm Michael Ferrero filling in for her, and we are in the last episode of the regular season of a Nuggets AMA. Ryan, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thanks for filling in. A little short notice, but we're going to get it
Yeah,
done.
that's
Having
okay.
a lot of
Sometimes it
fun.
happens. What do you think? Before we get into anything, what do you think about what is going on with the Nuggets? They've wrapped up the number one seed. They're benching. They're not benching, but they're resting their players, resting the starters down the stretch. What do you think about that strategy from Malone? Do you think it's beneficial, or do you think it hurts for them not to be necessarily playing at their best or peaking going into the playoffs?
Well, I think it's actually fine. I'm not really concerned. I think that momentum is mostly a myth. If you remember a couple of years ago, the Portland Trailblazers were amazing heading into the playoffs when they traded for Norman Powell, and then they faced the Nuggets in the first round and lost in 6 games, despite the fact that they were probably a better team than the Nuggets for the last 15, 20 games of that season. Not really a big deal. It's not something that I'd be concerned about. And I think the Nuggets, because of the play-in tournament, they'll have plenty of time to get their mojo back.
Okay, that's fair. All right, well, let's answer a few fan questions, starting with Jay. What is the optimal seeding for the Nuggets for these matchups, and what do you think the seeding will be?
It's a good question by Jay. I tend to think that basically the top 4 seeds, and maybe even not 5 seeds, but the top 4 seeds certainly are solidified. You've got the Nuggets at the top, then the Memphis Grizzlies, then the Sacramento Kings, then the Phoenix Suns. Those are pretty much locked in. After that, right now, you have the Clippers, then the Warriors, then I think it's the Lakers, and then the Pelicans, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's pretty good. I think for Denver, if they really want everything to kind of go their way in these playoffs, then they want a really good team to match up with the Suns to try to knock them out. They don't want to face the Lakers in the first round with the way that they're playing, despite the fact that I think the Nuggets can beat the Lakers and beat them pretty handily. Yeah. I still think that if you had a choice between the Pelicans without Zion Williamson or the Lakers right now, you'd probably take the Pelicans because they just don't have that top-end talent that I think pushes them over the top in a matchup like that. So I think for Denver, you want to keep the Warriors out of their side of the bracket. You want to face them later if you have to face them at all. And then you want to give the Suns a really tough matchup, as tough as you possibly can. The real key for Denver would be to get as easy of a first-round matchup as they possibly can. If the Timberwolves were to pop in, if the Oklahoma City Thunder were to pop in there, get that 8th seed in the play-in tournaments, then that would obviously be the most ideal. But I think what we just talked about with the Pelicans being that first-round matchup for Denver, that's probably the most likely thing. And then I think everything else stays pretty chalk.
Okay. So if most teams have 2, maybe 3 games left, what do you think that play-in tournament will look like? I mean, you've got 6 teams essentially that are all kind of – the West is a mess. Everyone's kind of all in the same – they're all kind of have the same record right now.
It is a jumble, that's for sure. Right now, the Clippers, they have the tiebreaker over the Warriors, despite the fact that those teams are tied. If the Clippers falter, then you'll have the Warriors pop up into the 5. But both of those teams, I think, are pretty safe as long as they take care of business in these final 2 games that they play. I got to imagine that the play-in tournament will be something like Lakers, Pelicans, T-Wolves, Thunder. I don't know if you saw it come across the timeline today, but it looks like the Mavericks are going to be resting guys tonight, trying to keep that draft pick and not be and get the 10th pick in the draft as opposed to the 11th.
Weird.
So it's the right call for them to do from a strategic standpoint because they just don't think they have a chance this year, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, that's wild, especially with the addition of Kyrie over there. So anyway, move on to a question from Cosmix. The Nuggets haven't finished the season well. But do you think they'll be able to get their mojo back when the playoffs start?
I do, and I know we touched on this a little bit earlier. I do think the momentum is mostly a myth. I think that a lot of teams, especially with the play-in tournament now, you're going to get time to reset. You're going to get time to figure some things out. And for the Nuggets, they're not even going to be able to know who they're going to play until Friday when that play-in tournament finally finishes. And then they'll see what happens on Sunday of next week. That'll be when they play game 1. I think that they will be just fine, though. I think if you talk to anybody within the Nuggets organization right now, they say a lot of the same things, that they just want to get there healthy. They know what they have. They understand how important these moments are, but they understand that the most important thing that they can do is just get there. And it looks like, knock on wood, it looks like they're going to be able to do that. So hopefully that can translate into defending home court in the first 2 games that they play at home against whichever 8th seed that they actually play. But as long as they can get that mojo back really quickly, they're going to be just fine. I feel pretty confident that going into these playoffs, they know what they have. They know that the starters are great. They've seen enough from Bruce Brown, Christian Brown. They know what those guys are going to bring. And it's just about filling in the gaps from there. And I think that they're going to be just fine from a mojo standpoint.
Yeah, and last night seemed pretty encouraging too, with no starters out there. They took Phoenix to the wire, so that's certainly an encouraging sign for Nuggets fans because there's been so many questions about the bench. But one guy that didn't play last night that the Nuggets are going to have to rely on is Aaron Gordon. So, what does the team need for him this postseason to make a deep run?
Yeah, Aaron is probably not played as well as he could over the course of these last couple months. Basically, ever since he wasn't named an All-Star. I think that whether it affected him prominently or just kind of behind the scenes, or if it's an actual thing or if it's just kind of an intrinsic thing, I don't know. But between the injury that he has to his right shoulder that he's pretty much managed for the entire season since that Christmas Day dunk, as well as just a general lack of physicality and a lack of, I think, attention to detail in some moments. He's got to be better. He's got to make better decisions. And one thing that really stands out to me about last year's playoff run was how Draymond Green got under his skin a little bit in that first round series. That can't happen. He's got to be mentally tough as much as he is physically tough heading into these playoffs. He's probably like a pressure point, I would say, for the opposing team when it comes to how can you break down the Nuggets? How can you put them on their heels and put them into a situation where you don't want them to be? One of those could be Aaron Gordon. And if he plays like, let's say, Andrew Wiggins played last year for the Warriors, then I think the Nuggets are going to feel pretty good when he's grabbing double-digit rebounds. He's taking over at various points when nobody else can really score, or just making a massive impact defensively. All of those things would be really, really helpful for Aaron as long as he can fill in the gaps where he needs to. But the Nuggets, they need him to be out there. They need him to be shooting well. He can't shoot 60% from the free throw line. He's got to be better than that. And he's probably got to be better than at least, I don't know, 32, 33% from three. If he is a complete non-factor from the perimeter, that's going to be a problem too.
Yeah, and we've talked offline a little bit, and it just hasn't seemed like he's been. I don't know if it's a health issue, if it's like you said, it's an exhaustion, not exhaustion, but he's wearing down a little bit as the regular season goes on. So maybe this week off will be good for him, and by game one, he'll kind of look like the Aaron Gordon that we saw going into the break.
Yeah, hopefully so. I do think that Aaron has to be that guy that Denver traded for back a couple of years ago. If he's not, then Denver's going to be in a world of hurt because they need everybody in their starting lineup to step up as much as they can.
Right. Well, speaking of the starters, if you had to guess on average, this question's from Bryce. If you had to guess on average, how many minutes per game do you think the starters will get in the playoffs?
Yeah, this is one where I know that Nuggets fans are a little bit concerned about the bench. I know that Nuggets fans are concerned about the different rotations. But one thing that's really stood out is that the starters are still fantastic. When they play, when they are dedicated, when they are focused, they generally have another gear where you just continue to push further and further and further. And as long as they're out there, Denver usually has a great chance to win. So I think that on average, those guys are probably going to play about 36 minutes a night. And they're not always going to be together. There will be some staggering, of course, probably about 24 minutes per game altogether, and Bruce will fill in for Michael Porter in some of those minutes. He'll fill in for Jamal Murray in some of those minutes. Maybe you'll get Jeff Green at various points or Christian Brown at various points. But most of the time, the starters are going to be who Denver goes to. Michael Porter's shown how effective he can be. Nikola Jokic will probably play about 38 to 40 minutes most nights. Jamal Murray probably the same thing. So Denver's got a lot of guys where they can count on them for heavy minutes if they need to. The question is whether they can sustain that for an entire 4 rounds, 2 months of time. I think that Denver's going to have to find ways to get those guys some rest, even within the playoffs. It's one of the interesting things that the Warriors did during this last run, where they had some games where they kind of just punted on them. They kind of just they had some blowouts against Dallas was one, against Memphis was one, against the Celtics was one. And then against the Nuggets in the first round, they didn't really have to try in those first 2 games that hard. So If Denver can get some good rest in series, then that could potentially flip everything.
Right. Well, and as you said, I laughed about it a little bit with you offline about this when you put out a poll about who you think the eighth man off the bench will be. I accidentally answered without reading the question, but it seems like a lot of people think that it's going to be a combo of potentially Zeke and Jeff Green. So for you to mention him there, I mean, he is a vet, and Malone does trust vets, which is interesting going into our next question because now we're talking about a rookie. Do you think that Michael Malone will actually consider throwing Peyton Watson out there for meaningful minutes in the playoffs?
He will consider it. There's zero doubt in my mind that it will be considered. It's one of the reasons why Peyton's playing as much as he is over the course of this last week. The Nuggets know how talented he is. They know that he has the physical capabilities. He brings something that they don't usually have from an athleticism, from a matchup standpoint. The problem where people will run into is they want to put the cart before the horse with Peyton Watson's development, and he still has a long way to go. But I do want to bring a couple things up here. Michael Malone back in the bubble trusted PJ Dozier, who at that point was a complete unknown from a play-in or from a playoff standpoint. Nobody knew what he was going to bring. He probably played like 7 games during the season that year. There was not a lot to trust or go off of, and yet Michael Malone threw him out there, and Denver won multiple playoff games because PJ Dozier was out there. And then they won Game 5 of the 2021 first round because Marcus Howard hit 3 threes in that game where Damian Lillard went off for 55. But because Marcus Howard hit some threes, Denver was able to survive that. So it's one of those things where I think people don't fully understand and appreciate that Michael Malone will do what it takes to get the win. He's not going to just blindly trust the veterans. If things aren't working, he's probably more concerned about his job security and more concerned about actually getting the job done rather than trying to make anybody happy. That's who he is. He is going to get the job done, even if you don't always agree with the results.
Yeah, I just had bad flashbacks of that. I mean, they won the game, but I can picture once you said the game where Marcus Howard hit 3 threes and Dame just went nuts. I can picture Austin Rivers going like this after he finally missed the shot. So hopefully
it was amazing. It was a fun experience. That was a moment of prayer for Austin Rivers.
Craziest games I've ever seen. So we'll move on. Fernando has a good question. Do you think Nikola Jokic is healthier this year going into the playoffs than he has been the previous 2 seasons?
Healthier is probably the wrong word here. I do think he's more rested. I think that the burden that he's had to carry this year is a little bit lesser than it has been in previous seasons. Yes, the Nuggets still crumble when he's not out there. Yes, they still have to play through him most of the time, but there have been fewer needs for him to get into the post and bang around and have to fight through the brick wall that he's had to in previous years because Jamal Murray's been back, because Michael Porter's been back. I think Aaron Gordon taking on a larger scoring role really helped. I think that there's been some good things, not with the bench specifically, but with the staggering that Denver has done. There have been times where Jokic hasn't had to come back out on the court. Now he's had to play minutes. He's had to play some high leverage minutes for sure, but I feel like those have been lesser. Now, healthier is a little bit different because he's been dealing with this calf injury. I do think it's a real injury. I think it's something that Nuggets fans should be at least minimally concerned about, but shouldn't be like moderately or majorly concerned about it, in my opinion, because he's going to get this time off from the rest of the games. I don't think he's going to play another minute this year, or at least in the regular season. And I think that the play-in tournament combining with that, that's good. He will have plenty of time to rest it, and then he will go headfirst into the Game 1 series of whoever Denver has to play against, and whether it's against New Orleans or the Lakers or whoever. Like, he's going to be the dominant Nikola Jokic. I promise you that.
Well, I think there's not many guys that can do it. And you know that the greats are people who can do it, and there aren't many of them. But once the playoffs start, man, I think he's going to flip a switch. Like I said, not many guys can do that, but he is by far, and I know we're in Denver, I know we're a little biased, but he's the best basketball player in the world. And so when the playoffs start, he's going to be ready because he knows, A, how good this team can be, and B, he has not had great support the last couple of years. No disrespect to the guys on the roster around him, but now he's got a much fuller complement around him. So I think your point is true. I think maybe we have to worry about the calf a little bit, but hopefully this week and a half, 2 weeks of rest will be enough for him to get back to close to would you say 90, 95% or so?
Yeah, and he also just knows what's expected of him, right? Like the MVP is one thing that I don't think he's really worried about. I think the Nuggets fans have basically given up on that. As tough as that may be, you wanted to see the three-time MVP, and maybe somebody surprises us, but I do think that Jokic is still like he's going to go off. There are very few instances in the playoffs where he hasn't gone off. Most of the time he does, and he's in the best possible situation of his career from a supporting cast standpoint. I think it's better than it's ever been from a supporting cast standpoint. So if he can't do it this year, then it may never happen.
Don't say it like that. But you're right. All right. Well, we'll move on to the last question from Nicole Aesthetic. If the Nuggets go all the way, make a finals appearance, win the championship, how will they as in the national media, attempt to discredit or discount their success?
This is a fun one because I've been discussing offline most of the time about what I'm going to be tweeting to people, about what I'm going to be gloating about
Petty Ryan is one
whenever
of my
it
favorite
does.
Ryans that there is.
Oh
So
my gosh. Whenever it does happen, it's going to be glorious. But if it does happen and people have these excuses, I have no doubt, zero doubt, that Jamal Murray is going to be the reason that they win a finals game, that Michael Porter is going to be the reason that they win a finals game. And if Jamal Murray has a great matchup and he goes off and like he plays and averages like, I don't know, 25 and 8 or something like that, which is very possible. He's done it before. I think that there will be people that be like, you know, Nikola Jokic's supporting cast is underrated. Like, look at how crazy these guys are. Look at how insane Jamal Murray's going. Look at how crazy Michael Porter is as a shooter. Their defense is so much better. Their defense, it just cocoons Jokic. Makes sure to hide his weaknesses in the best way that it can. That will be what the narrative is. There will never be a general desire to crown him. There will never be a general desire to crown the Nuggets because they're not a sexy franchise. I think everybody has been conditioned to bash the Nuggets. And I'm really looking forward to the moments where Nuggets fans can rise above that and they can say, look, this is amazing. Look at what this guy has done. Look at what this team has done. Look at the credit that they absolutely deserve that we've been trying to get from you for a long time. They've finally done it. You better give the credit or else you're going to look like a dumbass. And I think that that's going to be pervasive in the entire national media, and the lone voices that try to discredit it, they're going to be hounded by a lot of people. Like because there's so much pressure on the Nuggets this year. There's so much pressure to deliver for Nikola Jokic, for Michael Malone, for Jamal Murray, for everybody. And if they do, that makes it even sweeter. And it's going to make any attempts to discredit it even funnier because it doesn't matter. If you win a title, if you get to the finals, you are a great team, bar none. And if Denver's able to do that, then more power to them. And I look forward to the resulting discourse where I get to laugh at people and make sure that they feel bad for what they've said.
Well, then the team will have the ultimate response too. We'll see another Angel Reese just point to the ring finger. That's the only answer you need right there. Last one. I know I said the last one was from them, but this one's from me putting you on the spot. You have to pick right now. Who do you think the Nuggets are going to play in the first round?
I'm going to say the Pelicans. I think that the Lakers get the 7. I think the Pelicans get the 8. I think that the Pelicans are really talented. They're not as talented without Zion Williamson, but Brandon Ingram's been playing like a top 15 player over the course of these last couple of months. And it does feel like they've generated some momentum. So should be an interesting first round series, one that Denver should definitely win, but don't be surprised if the Pelicans give them a scare.
Right. Well, that's why you are the best in the business, sir. So thanks for hanging out with me and putting up with me. Kim will be back next week. And hopefully by around this time, we'll know if your prediction comes true.
We will see. I'm excited for it, but it should be a great playoffs. I'm looking forward to it. If it sucks, then you'll never find me on the internet again.
All right, man. Take care.
See ya.